In Addis, we will support our efforts to end hunger by transforming political will into further and coordinated action. One thing is needed. Understand that to end hunger, we must look beyond simple increase in food production. Producing more is very important, but it's not enough. We need to address the many issues that keep people from being food secure, including the lack of access to food, which is the main cause of hunger today, including in Africa. Investment in agriculture remains the single most effective way to provide opportunity for families to generate income and improve nutrition in Africa.
As you all know, the theme of the high-level meeting is towards African relations, renewed partnership for unified approach to end hunger in Africa by 2025 within the Ghana framework. This theme is grounded on 5 fundamental principles. First, while celebrating the 50th anniversary of the AU, under the theme Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance, the African continent has awakened to the carrying call of African Renaissance. Setting this vision is crucial for arousing commitment to positive change. The banner assures Africans that they are capable of developing their continent and confine the lifelong problems of poverty and the widespread and persistent hunger to history. Therefore, whatever we do should be for realizing the goal of reawakening our continent. On renewed partnerships, there is no doubt that disjointed efforts have contributed to rendering our continent to lag behind, which would make the Renaissance a dream elusive. Working together strengthens complementarities and leaves no stone unturned. Partnership is therefore a requisite cornerstone for bringing together state and non-state actors, stakeholders and partners who share roles and responsibilities and mutually account for their work. A massive problem, such as the widespread hunger, cannot be tackled from one angle, only but through concerted effort. On unified approaches to end hunger in Africa, it is important to recognize that consolidating efforts, creating and applying common standards are necessary tenets for ensuring continuity and comparability. It is important that countries pursue same targets and indicators, achieve similar results within similar time frames. It is our fervent belief that the target year of 2025 could enrich the post-2015 scaling up of operations towards systematic reduction in the incidence of hunger through increased resilience general population.
My country, Ethiopia, is one example registering a double-digit economic growth for the past 9 years, and basically driven by growth in the agriculture sector. We have also demonstrated that if we have to grow and change the current circumstances, homegrown development policies that fits into the social-political situation is the only way out. It's only through this process that we could build productive capacity in our citizens to be able to actively participate in the development and also benefit from it. Since the endorsement 10 years ago of Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program, short CADA, it has contributed to the growth of agriculture through the process of self-assessment of policies and strategies. It has also sensitized countries who have not given attention to agriculture through budgetary requirement and setting targets. In the 70s and 80s, Ethiopia has been seriously affected by recurrent droughts, resulting in deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. Agriculture has failed to support the rural population, mainly due to lack of coherent policies unable to provide the right support to the farming community. The droughts, in addition to severe degradation of natural resources, has exposed the population to chronic hunger situation, which in turn necessitates quick reversal of condition or otherwise to a series of exodus. This is where the food security program was designed in order to address the chronic food insecurity as an integral component of rural development policy.
And this food is produced mainly by small farmers. Currently, Tanzania is self-sufficient to the extent of 104%. That means we essentially have a surplus in terms of the food that we really need. The aim is to reach 115% by the year 2015. And we hope that we'll reach this expansion through increase of irrigation. From what we are currently irrigating, about 451 hectares to about 1 million hectares. That is roughly twice the amount of land that we are irrigating right now. We intend to go through this change through what we have initiated, a strategy which we call Kilimo Kwanza, which means agriculture first. This, together with the policy of the corridor policy that we've initiated in the particular areas in the southern western part of the country, which we call agricultural sector development of Tanzania corridor. We hope that by involving the private sector and the small farmers, we'll be able to reach our target, as we have said. This will be achieved within the framework of the agricultural policies and also through what we have recently adopted, the big results now. A way of trying to steer our development process by choosing priorities and putting our effort mostly in those areas of priorities. We have currently selected 6 areas of priorities, which we believe that these areas of priorities will help us really overcome some of the fundamental problems of development we have been experiencing. These areas of development of priorities include agriculture, water, transport, education, and Ministry of Finance for resource mobilization. We have launched this program already, and this program is going to be supervised by the Presidential Delivery Bureau, which is under the President's office, and therefore it will be better coordinated nationally. But at the same time, we expect each ministry to have its own delivery bureau so that they can steer the activities of the ministry in a way that we will achieve those big results now. Of course, we hope that in doing so, we'll be able to attract private sectors as well as the small farmers to help in, and other stakeholders to help in the increase of production of food, but also in alleviating some problems that we are experiencing in transport and other areas. It is important to notice that in trying to do so, we hope that through Kilimo Kwanza, the initiative which is being led by the President himself will lead up to the scaling up of nutrition, and also it will also be able to ensure ourselves food sufficiency and also have access for export to other neighboring countries.
He came and I said, why don't you work with me on the farm? I said, Daddy, it took me 13 years to become an expert in electronics, and you want me to waste it on your farm? No. So I said, well, there will be a little bit of electronics. He was very confused.
Earlier on in the keynote addresses, we had the benefit of Dr. Lindiwe Swanda speaking to us about what role civil society, academia, and in particular the private sector said they were committed to. But from the presentations that have been made, including the last one that has been made by Malawi, one of the experiences, and that also includes our own experience in Zambia, is that the offtake by the private sector is both low and slow. Maybe what we could ask Dr. Lindiwe Swanda is, in your discussions regarding the contribution that can be made by your group and particularly the private sector, how do you think we can overcome this? How can governments help to overcome this? And I know that there are some cases, countries have talked about the issues of e-vouchers and so on and so forth, which have been espoused by other institutions. How helpful are these in terms of practically reaching the intended targets in the rural areas especially? That is where most of the production is taking place. Kindly share with us, if you may, when we come back this afternoon, how the private sector can speed up the offtake so that some of the responsibilities, some of the costs can be shared between the private sector.
Ending hunger is a big dream. And I must tell you that this cannot be done when agricultural transformation is beneath notice. Because increasingly, the number of people who are living in abject poverty and misery come from Africa. Paradoxically, most of them are the farmers who are the key practitioners when it comes to agricultural production. The cadet agenda to the NSC team on the continent so far has been well crafted, and we've been advocating for the past couple of years after being involved on board for the international donor community, for our national government to increase investment in the agricultural sector, and also believing that all initiatives that are linked to infrastructure, value addition in agriculture, agricultural transformation should be aligned to the cadet agenda, unless we are thinking of reinventing the wheel, or unless we are thinking of a principle that to do development we must destroy existing initiatives. We want to therefore believe that all initiatives that are geared towards agricultural development, geared towards food and nutrition security on the continent, be it on the issues of making good use of scientific information coming from the scientific community. Let it be issues linked to capacity development. Let it be issues linked to strengthening the civil society or investment. It should be linked to CADEP, because CADEP adequately do have that framework which will accommodate all these initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, the Pan-African Farmers Organization, which is an initiative of regional-based farmer organizations from the 5 regions from the continent, SACAO from the southern part, Eastern African Farmers Federation from the eastern, ROPA from the west, OMAGRI from the north, ROPA from the Central African region, are all initiatives that came from farmers' organizations themselves. And this organization to them should be a representative and also the mouthpiece of farmers on the continent when it comes to issues that are geared towards agricultural transformation and the development of the rural world on the continent. It is still at the early age of its birth, and we think that all the institutions should be strengthened to better accompany the African Union, to better accompany the regional economic communities and the national government in realizing the dream of eradicating hunger by 2015 on the continent.
The issue of farmers and women farmers. The women who are at 5% or above and who are producing the food of the continent are poor. This has to be readdressed. If this is readdressed, then we have come somewhere. We will be somewhere because the women will be encouraged to produce more, and to add to it, there should be a market for the women produce. These are the issues that I have learned, and I am believing that the Commission will commit by doing what they have promised to do. It's a commitment.
I think for me, they need to walk the talk. You know, we talk about public-private partnerships. What you've realized is that even the private sector that is coming to invest in agriculture in Africa is not even African. You know, it's from Europe, it's from the US, it's from out of Africa. You know, where is the African private sector? I believe the African private sector has resources. They can actually invest in this continent. They're people with resources. When you talk about private partnerships, I think the government, in as much as we are trying to promote that kind of arrangement, I think we need to be to show the clear opportunities to actually invest. A lot of governments now, due to these foreign direct investments, are not taking their respective role in public policy. Yeah, we're talking about governments laying the necessary infrastructure for private sector to come and actually invest. But we are realizing that governments are also taking a step back and almost exposing the private sector to actually lead in some of the processes. And private sector will not do it. The private sector will not put a road. They're not going to put electricity. Yeah? Government has to do that role. And then the private sector comes in and puts in the industry. Yeah? And then starts then working with other private sector. So for me, the issue is that the African governments have to rethink these public-private partnerships. We know for a fact in agriculture we have no institutions that actually can present data that is reliable, that is that is factual, that more or less advises us in terms of the investments. We rely on data by World Bank, IFPRI, and all these international institutions. We don't have our own data. And so that again could be a challenge in terms of then showing the private sector the areas they can actually invest in. So government has to play a huge role. We have the private sector in Africa, that is not being invited for meetings. We've said before, we need an African investment conference on agriculture, not just on infrastructure, not just in banks. We need something in agriculture where we actually invite the African private sector. Everybody, we have rich African private sector in this continent, but we are not tapping into those resources. Yeah, and for me, the issue of data is very important because we are going to be competitive and be very clear in terms of where we want to invest. Then the private sector has to actually see clearly that here is an opportunity we can actually invest.
Mr. Mutulu, the target by this conference is that by 2015, rather 2025, Africa must have no hunger. Do you think it is possible?
It is possible because, like I said, we are producing below the world average. Yes. We have the potential to actually produce around where the world is producing. We have had these meetings for the longest time. I think the sort of resolutions and sort of proposals we present at the end of every meeting are very similar. When you look at the CADIP, when CADIP was signed in 2003, the aspirations of the African leaders were very clear. And these are some of the things we've been grappling with, every year. Every year. We can actually achieve, those commitments if we work together, if the policies are right, if the investments are right, if the markets are actually working. There's no reason why we can't be able to end hunger by 2025. We can actually end it if we work together.
One of the critical issues that came out was funding to the agricultural sector.
Yes.
Do you think this meeting will resolve affirmative in terms of influencing governments to increase budget allocation to the agricultural sector?
I don't think it really will. Because the debate around investing, putting more investment in agriculture has been there, in every country meeting every year when you have the partnership platforms. I don't think it really will. I think, like I said, people have to really see the incentives to really put in money. I think we have to look for other avenues that are actually going to bring money to agriculture. We have to actually show that agriculture can really work, and then people are going to really put in money. So for me, it may not really do that. You may attract funding from elsewhere, not necessarily from the African states. And I think a lot of African countries are having challenges in terms of raising money. When you look at the budgets for a lot of countries in the region I represent, they have major budget shortfalls, a lot of them. And the biggest culprit most times is the agriculture sector. Maybe it's because it's not very organized, people are not forceful, maybe it's because people don't see the opportunities to actually invest, and that's why it's seen as a by the way in terms of putting in money. So for me, we have to look for maybe other innovative ways of actually bringing in money into the sector. One of the ways is probably putting together a fund, a revolving fund. I know Kenya, for example, in their current agriculture budget, have put together a revolving fund. It's 20 million Kenya shillings, but they're saying it's going to be raised to 4 billion plus by the end of 5 years. And the idea is, can you have this basket fund where people are putting in money? But it's a revolving fund. People are borrowing, investing, returning the money. And this money is growing. It's attracting more funding from elsewhere. And there are more people who are actually tapping into this resource. Can we see banks focusing now in supporting agriculture, developing products that are friendly to farmers, so that then more farmers are patroning this kind of banks and getting this kind of credit. Can we see innovative funding coming from elsewhere? The venture funds are now coming into Africa, and I've seen even African institutions now are putting together venture funds. These are people who are putting together funding to actually support agriculture. So for me, in as much as we talk about increasing funding to agriculture, I know as an institution we've pushed for it in all our countries. Governments always promise, but every time they put together a budget, there's a budget shortfall. There are other challenges that probably they are facing. We have to look beyond our countries and look at where can we get other funding from? How can we make more innovative funds so that people can actually access resources in agriculture?
The Brazilian experience has included the social protection aspect in terms of enhancing agriculture.
Yes.
Did you think that could also be applicable to the African scenario?
Yes, because small-scale farmers always bear the brunt of price, food hikes, climate change, and so on. And majority of them are so small. They are less than 2 acres of land, and hence they cannot be able to produce sustainably throughout the year. So they actually fall into that bracket of whenever there are subsidies, they have to be actually supported. So we need some sort of social protection for this cadre of farmers, because most of them fall in that kind of category. And the Brazilian model has worked because they have actually seen the importance of helping farmers to get out of a bad patch during production, and hence they're able to get back into production quickly and be able to produce. I give an example. When you look at livestock, for example, in our region, in 2008 there was a major hunger. It was drought in the Horn of Africa, and a lot of our members lost their livestock. So when it started raining again, when you started resuming, you realize that these farmers were maybe 10 steps backwards of where they were when they actually had livestock. And if you had a program where we could actually destock, buy these animals, you'd actually have maybe some money. Then you'd probably support them in terms of, feed and so on, so that the government intervention would not be as great or as huge as it was then in 2008. So it's important to have a program for social protection to actually target this group of people because they're very vulnerable whenever there are changes economically or in terms of weather. The challenge usually in our region is actually managing these kind of social protection programs. They're poorly managed, so they end up not serving the purpose they're supposed to serve. And people feel disenfranchised, really. Is it that they were not planned properly? Is it that the execution was not done properly, or are there maybe other interests? So they end up not serving the purpose they were actually meant to serve.
As an organization, have you at any time made some deliberate efforts to find out why most African countries have failed to live up to the expectations in terms of increasing funding to agriculture, even after they sign some agreements such as CADIP?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that a lot of our governments have is political will. Yeah, because there are very many commitments that our governments have signed into, very many. Yeah, but they're just international agreements. And those agreements never reach the national level. So the challenge usually is that there's a disconnect between the signatories and the expected potential beneficiaries. So there's a lack of information. So that is the hugest challenge. I take maybe CADIP as an example. A lot of our members never knew about CADIP up until a couple of years ago. Yet our leaders signed to these documents almost 10 years ago. So there has been a process of CADIP. There have been institutions identified to actually implement programs under CADIP. Yeah. Even at the ministries, many people have never recognized CADIP as the framework for agriculture. You always find CADIP at the corner somewhere. It's a program. It's not the program. I don't know about the AUC, whether CADIP is viewed as the program for agriculture and other institutions. Maybe it's somewhere at the corner, somewhere. So I think for us, we don't own this CADIP process. And you see, the fish rots from the head. Yeah. So if there's no one providing leadership at the top, then everybody will see, it's just another program. Yeah. And people will not internalize it. They will not take it seriously. Yeah, and so there will be no real political commitment. So like I said, the challenge I think is political will. People still view it as a program, like any other, maybe a drought program in their own programs. They've never internalized it as the program. Over many years, there has been a disconnect with respect to engagement of other actors, private sector, farm organizations. You're viewed as by the way in terms of participation. when you look at the funding to actually support CADIP process, we have a multi-donor trust fund where the chairman of my organization actually sits in. But there are actually no resources put aside for non-state actors. The resources put aside are for the state actors. So at some point it's viewed as a state thing, as public thing, not really for engagement by the private kind of institutions. So it's an issue of political will. Our governments have also challenged in terms of funding, and maybe that's also part of the reason why not enough funding has been allocated for agriculture as well. So I look at it as two main challenges.
Mr. Muchiri, are you saying that basically we are doing nothing, even this meeting may not yield anything?
I'm not saying we are doing nothing. Yeah, I cannot say we are doing nothing. I think last year, or was it the CADIP partnership platform, I think the 8th or the 9th that was held in Nairobi, where we actually said we need to revamp this process. We need to turn it around and start looking at it differently. And we started pushing for engagements of other actors in the entire process. I think it has been a learning process also. That's what I would say. And I think governments are now realizing the importance of having other actors also having a say. I think the questions that have been raised in this meeting today, by several ministers, why is the private sector, why is it slow in terms of engaging? They now need to sit back and really reflect. Why is it the private sector is not engaging? Why is it that it's very slow? Why is it that farmers have been raising all these concerns about this process? So after some time, people start reflecting and thinking again, okay, where is this process really going? So I don't think it's really a waste of time, because I think for the past, I can say now 10 years, I think a lot of people now are coming to understand, issues of agriculture, issues of budgeting. Like if I look at my institution now, we have done sensitization on the CADIP process at the national level. We have done studies tracking budgets, in the 5 East Africa community countries. We have raised all these issues with the governments and everyone and other actors. We are doing work on land. We are doing work on cooperatives. We are doing work, in the entire sector. That never used to happen. There was that vacuum. But we are coming in and trying to connect all these things in agriculture. We're informing our members of updates with respect to developments in agriculture, Grow Africa, the New Alliance on Food Security, and so on. Our members are now getting to know some of these things, and they're able then to ask, as compared to before, when that never used to happen. Things are presented in conferences, and people just left. So I think people are coming to understand the issues. We are presenting declarations, we are presenting positions, which are, again, going down to our members. We're ensuring that our members are actually engaged at the national level. We are now having regional parliaments, and regional parliaments are supposed to be, a mirror of the national parliaments. And we're in all the processes where, these ministers are actually coming to make decisions, like we have in this current ongoing meeting. So I cannot say we've been doing nothing at all, yes. I know we name and shame our governments because of budget allocation to agriculture. We are doing it, and I think we'll continue doing it.
How does the private sector involve the youth and the women?
I'm a young person. I believe I'm a young person. And I think the organization I work for, the leadership in that institution has provided space for young people to actually manage the institution. So my institution is an example of involving young people and women in an institution of farmers, because we are supposed to be the next generation of farmers. But that said, I think a lot of private sector institutions at the national level have been putting a lot of pressure on government to actually consider supporting young people. If I give the example of Kenya, I think one of the things with the new government is that even in terms of procurement, government procurement, 30% of that will be done by the young people. That means even in the agriculture ministry, those opportunities will be provided to the young people. There are youth funds that have been set up, women funds that have been set up, and we've actually been pushed for, within the entire fund, an allocation for agriculture.
What type of jobs do you think the young people want to do in agriculture? So as to stay in agriculture, not to go in and then come out.
I think when you look at the opportunities there are in agriculture, is that people don't see like they are real opportunities. And our organizations, partnering even with media, we've been able to showcase a lot of successes and best examples of, just investment by young people, and they're actually making money. Last week we had a livestock conference in Nairobi and a breeders show in Nairobi, and there had been a program running throughout the week, and even last year when they had the breeders show, that similar program ran throughout the week, and the young people actually invested in dairy farming and are actually making a lot of money. The young people invested in poultry and they're making a lot of money. The young people invested in tomato farming in greenhouses and they're actually making money. Of course, the target mainly for young people is to make money quickly. They don't want maybe to start planting tea today or coffee today, which will be ready after several years. They want to make money quickly. So it's really showing these opportunities that you can actually make your money within 6 months. And here are the opportunities to actually invest. But in terms of areas for investment, there are many areas. They can actually get involved in seed multiplication. They can get involved in value addition. They can get involved in marketing of agriculture products. They can get involved even in technology transfer. Even seeing, telemarketing in horticulture. And it's young people actually involved in that. So the opportunities are there. I think the way agriculture is portrayed sometimes, is a man and a hoe and he has this huge farm with maize and that's it. Yeah. But even in terms of maize, people are investing in milling. Yeah, you can actually make a lot of money just by milling. Yeah, so it's a bit more how you package where the opportunities are for the young people to actually see it. But again, you have to present to them the means for them to be able to invest, and that's why they need to have the fund ready. They need to be trained in business skills as well, so they can actually then venture into that kind of business.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you look at when you look at the smallholder farmers,
yes.
And you said that you cannot invest, for instance, like in energy.
Energy.
Yes, you said it was for governments. But when you look at where these smallholder farmers are based, you see that they are not on the grid. Like, for instance, if it's hydropower we are talking about. Mm-hmm. So why can't the private sector, for instance, maybe involve itself in the provision of solar or wind energy, depending on where that place is in Africa?
I think they are doing that in terms of solar, especially solar energy. I think they're actually doing that. And I think also farmers have gone a step forward and they're investing in bioenergy. There's biogas and all these kind of things. They're actually investing in that. And farmers have even gone further because they're actually investing in cottage industries, which are using this kind of power sources. But we are talking about really opening up an area. We need a road that farmers can actually move this product to the market. We need to bring in high voltage power so that these farmers they can actually exploit their potential farm. So that you put up big industries that can actually process, but more even bring other services. Because in as much as these farmers may be investing in bioenergies and solar, but they're missing other services, other social amenities. Because without that kind of investment, then you don't get hospitals, you don't get schools, you don't get so many other things. And you think, and you see, the farmer needs to enjoy that quality of life, yeah, so that they can actually feel that they're also viewed as citizens. So that's a bit more the angle I was talking about. Thank you.
Two questions.
Time is not.
Thank you very much for accepting our short notice interview. You guys are ready?
We are.
Okay. How can AU countries budget for the poor? Something that has come up from the Brazil presentation.
I think this is a new added value
into the work we have been doing, we must budget for the poor. And as you see in Africa, many people are poor. If you budget and you don't consider your population, and especially a big part of the population, then you are budgeting for the rich. And I think it's time that we change the approach. How do we budget for the poor? When we started gender budgeting, it was very foreign. But now we have come to realize that women matter. Now, the majority of the poor actually are women. So, we have to put their tools, we have to put their variables to ensure that the poor people are part and parcel of what we budgeted for in the past and now. We missed the opportunity. Maybe we should have done very well by now. So we have to develop yardsticks for the same. We have to develop implementation. We have to monitor to see how the poor is being put at the center of everything we do.
And what is the social protection for African countries? What is the design? Because even when it was presented there, I didn't understand it very well.
Social protection is a new concept. It's not new in vocabulary, but it is new in practice. Because as you have said, we have always left out the poor in our budgeting. Mm-hmm. And this is what social protection is all about. Once you budget for the poor, then you are taking care of social protection. What is it? We have many vulnerable groups. We have to categorize the vulnerable groups. We see those who don't have the land. How do we cater for those who don't have the land? Then we see those who are on the land but poor. We don't just give handouts. We give them the capacity to produce. So that's what social protection is all about. It's about ensuring that every part and parcel of your population is covered. If they are just homeless, then those you categorize them and cater for them differently. So it is taking care of that population which has got more vulnerable, I think, livelihoods, which are not really very good for the population. We have many people who are vulnerable. We have, for example, those who have been displaced for the land, they become vulnerable. We have those who are sick, they are vulnerable. But also we have the old, the aged. Those are vulnerable. We put there a mechanism ensuring that those people are taken care of. That is social protection. Now, which countries have done that? There are some countries in Africa which are a success story. Take, for example, the case of Ethiopia. Ethiopia started a social protection program several years back. And as I speak now, I'm sure you have seen that they no longer have this kind of the hunger and famine which used to be portrayed in the media. This is what has been done, and that it has happened, and many countries can do that. They can achieve it.
What frameworks are there to build a hunger-free continent in Africa?
I think Africa is lucky, and I must say that we are going to have it easy because we have a continental framework, the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program. It has been admired. It is a good program which can drive the success of the continent. It can be able to get people out of hunger. It can be able to get people out of poverty. It can also be able to ensure that the continent develops. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because the opportunities for job creation, the opportunities for agro-processing, for industrialization, all lie in agriculture. I have seen the countries, for example, the Pacific coming here to understand the CADAP because they see it has been able to rally all the partners around it. Globally, the partners know that with Africa, if you have to put resource, it has to go through the CADAP framework. It has been able also to bring people together in the continent. At the country level, people are together. We are able to talk about CAADP together. So CAADP is the most important framework which can help us rid the continent hunger and malnutrition, which we have to fight for.
What is the picture of hunger in Africa?
Let me say that the agricultural growth has been going up. And we have cases of vulnerability, of course, as a result of climate change, and the drought has been ravaging the continent. Sometimes you see a lot of floods and all that. So we have had some challenges arising out of a crisis. The crisis in the Horn of Africa, the crisis in the Sahel, those are the areas where we have seen some extreme hunger. But of recent, I think food has been more or less becoming more available, and precisely why? Because people are now prioritizing agriculture. They are looking at what we are talking about, the guiding principles of CAADP, the pillars of CAADP, all help in rallying people around agriculture. And let me say also, the media, you have contributed, because you have been able to put a case. You have been able to put a case because, why? The population of Africa, which depend on agriculture, is so high, so put the right kind of attention to the right people. If you have 70% of your population on agriculture and you don't give them the budget, then you have not been able to attend to your population. So you have contributed to that success. We are seeing some good success stories, but we are still talking, we want more, want Africa hunger-free, want Africa poverty-free. And agriculture is the foundation.
Do you think there is enough political will by the governments?
For agriculture to really to be the center of focus, leadership is important. And where it is happening, the leadership of the continent is actually taking the lead. Yes, the leadership of the continent is committed now. When I am in a meeting, I see the leadership striving to learn more, asking for this and that, and related to the development of agriculture. So the leadership is committed to that. And I want to see that one growing. And next year is the year of agriculture and food security. And it was requested for by the leadership of the continent. That is an indication that they are what? They are committed. So those who are not convinced, just like in the Bible, when Jesus had just resurrected, and Thomas said, is this Jesus really? Just okay, come and put your hand here. Those who are not the doubting Thomases, I think are going to be left behind unless they touch and see. Many countries are making it because the leadership is committed. And food security is political. Food security is political. It's a political question. Unless food is available, then the politics of the country go wrong. So the leadership has got to be committed to food security.
And is there going to be a deliberate campaign on ending hunger in Africa by the AU?
By the end of tomorrow, we shall have a declaration. I'm sure the heads of state will come out with a renewed commitment to ending hunger. And out of that one, the Commission, which is very dynamic, under Her Excellency Dlamini Zuma, we are going to do what? We are going to ensure that we step up advocacy, we step up implementation, we follow up countries, we monitor, we see what is happening as far as a campaign on ending hunger is going. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Probably you signed a CAADP in 2007, somewhere there. Other countries are still signing, others signed some time back, as regards to 10% funding to agricultural sector. Some of African countries have not implemented that, and yet we are signing another communique that is supposed to be implemented. What measures have you put in place in order for CAADP to become effective, and what you are signing as in regard to reducing hunger?
What we are doing now is to renew commitment to CAADP. the signing of whatever they will sign. I don't know if they are going to sign, because I don't want to think for the heads of state. But what they will come up with tomorrow is a renewed commitment, is a determination, is to say we are still with CADAP, we are still with agriculture. We have not left agriculture. And as I note, and in my monitoring system, I see that all countries are increasing resource input into agriculture.
Your Excellency, I only have one question from what you just told us about climate variability. My question is that how well are we using our research institutions and even the meteorologists on the continent? We have ACMAD. How well are we using this to ensure that they give us the correct advice and we're able to take advantage of that to increase our agricultural productivity?
We have all the regions linked to our work, the work we do. We meet with them. We provide support. We even provide advocacy for them to get more resources. So the ACMAD, the agreement, they are all one we have in Indian Ocean, one is in Botswana. They are all together with us and they work with us. They provide information, which information we have put a monitoring system at the country level. Each country, we have empowered it to have a downloading system to get meteorological information on climate change to be used for the countries to guide them in their investments or on the land, to give information to the farmers. So we are working with them. Those regional economic, we call them RICs, regional implementing groups. They are all working with us. We have a big program called, in fact, one has ended, one has come on, monitoring of environment, so sustainable development. We have got resources and given them, we have capacitated them.
Probably, Your Excellency, for clarity's sake, these policies are made in the rooms and so on and so forth, giving hopes to small-scale farmers out there. What measures have you put in place in order for these policies to move out of here and reach them in the rural parts of Africa?
I believe that the rural parts of Africa are part of us, because where do we come from? And where did you come from? You think you came from Addis Ababa? Mm-hmm. The fact that you didn't come from Addis Ababa shows that we also link up with what? With the grassroots people. The people who are here represent those grassroots people. We invited people from all over the continent. This is how we do business. In fact, at the country level, the investment plans are put in place by multi-sectoral group, including the CSOs. We have never had an organized farming system than now.
One, Ghana as a country and has been showing tremendous progress in CADIP implementation. And so recalling your commitment to agricultural transformation through CADIP in Maputo 2003, and noting that we are celebrating 10 years of this commitment, what strikes you as a leader in terms of key successes in Ghana?
Well, yes, I agree with you that Ghana has made tremendous success in this CADIP program. And 10 years of CADIP since Maputo. I would say that Ghana, we have met consistently over the past 4 or 5 years. Our resource allocation to the agricultural sector has been consistently a little bit over the 10% requirement. In terms of growth, it's been hovering around 4.5 to 5%. But even that, it depends upon the quality of investment. We've also developed our FASDEP since 3-4 years ago, and a lot of development partners are coming around to support the METASIP, which is the plan, and government itself has been meeting its target, but the gap in financing is being met by other development partners, even though it's not 100%. So I would say that those are the key features of
the CADIP in terms of fast dep and metaseed in Ghana. We are actively pursuing it, and we believe that that was the key to our agricultural transformation.
Okay. So in your view, what are the key steps that governments should take to increase agricultural investments nationally and regionally as envisaged by sustaining the CADIP Momentum initiative?
The whole business of implementing the CADIP is a sector issue. So to increase investment, the approach is through the partnerships. So depending on how we are able to bring collaborators on board and get them involved in the roles they have to play, then we have shared investment. You see more investments coming on board. And that is what even the G8 New Alliance and the Grow Africa try to bring up by bringing in the international. So efforts or mechanisms that bring partners to share in visions, in targets like joint planning. In Ghana, we applied the value chain approach to examine the sector or a subsector to see where the challenge is and who is partnering in a particular intervention. That also helps to identify our roles and where we come in with resources. So I see that as a good way of dealing with the increasing investment issue. That can be done at country level, sub-regional level, because in production, in the chain, there's trade aspect. Okay. So that is a good approach that can help
to increase investment.
To address investment. Okay,
so the African Union Commission and the AU in particular are very big on women and youth in agriculture. Do you have any particular steps in Ghana promoting that?
Yeah.
Well, in Ghana, we've developed a special youth in agriculture program that also emphasizes participation of women. It's a huge program, and it's a national program, and as many youth that want to go into agricultural enterprises, from crop production through livestock to fish farming, encouraged to do so. The program has caught on very well with the youth, and it is being supported mainly through government funding. So that is how we are addressing the issue of youth and women in the career process.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with the focus now on CADIP investment plans to achieve results and impact, there's an increased call to strengthen the policy and institutional environment at country level. So as a country, what do you intend to do to institute real policy and institutional reforms to achieve this goal?
You know, with policy and institutional issues, you get the non-state actors often hitting at the public. But then sometimes there are issues that the non-state also have to address. So there's joint processes of identifying them, policy dialogue, joint sector reviews to identify the issue in the first place. And then if we should institute a mutual accountability system, we have developed a framework a while ago and considering how to get it into place. So having a mutual accountability system, what you have identified becomes the indicators of the system. So identifying one, establishing it and implementing it is one way of instituting policy and getting it implemented.
Okay, so this is like also talking about like the partnerships, what just from talking about in the conference that is going on. But how do you see that progressing? Like, do you think it's something that's going to happen now? Do you think it's going to, because there's a big call for policy change because some of the policies actually affect agricultural transformation in the continent.
All these things are not new, really.
Yeah.
We've done them, we do them under projects, we do them when ministries are reforming and changing with different orientations. So we have done institutional reviews, institutional assessment. We have come up with, we've revised legislation, and we know what happens when they are not implemented. We don't develop the regulations to follow through and all that. But if you bring this into a mutual accountability system, then you have other, and people must be knowledgeable anyway. You have others who prompt where you slack on aspects that will make policy effective. So the same things we used to do, but in a mutual accountability system, there's some assurance of it's rolling out than before.
Okay. Just to add, we have had to undertake a lot of policy reforms. One of them is the public-private partnership policy, which has been established. It's under the Ministry of Finance, but with desks in the Ministry of Agriculture, and that provides the framework within which partnerships in the agricultural sector are being pursued. We have had to reform our Plant and Fertilizer Act, the seed policy, the fertilizer policy, and the regulations. And we are currently doing the plant breeders bill. All these reforms are required to situate our mentorship properly within the CADEP framework and to enable the partnerships that we envisage, both local and external, to be able to engage with us. Because for partnerships to thrive, you need a very predictable policy regulatory framework. And this is what we've done over the past few years.
Okay. So finally, we've done 10 years of CADEP and we're looking forward to the next 10. What would you like to see in the next 10 years of CADEP? And as a country, what are you going to do differently, or what do you envisage yourselves doing in the next decade of CADEP?
Next 10 years.
You've been 50 years, the AU is now stressing.
You look at what introduced CADEP in the first place. It came under the NEPAD umbrella. What I have experienced, we as a country, is that CADEP is just the agricultural vision. There were other aspects of that umbrella that were to run together. And if we just push the agriculture alone, we struggle. There are land issues, governance issues, and they are in the NEPAD framework. So if we run the full framework, and that's what we should do for the next 10 years, we see that the others will pick up. And the regional economic communities also have frameworks within which the CADEP sits. All these are complementary. So we should do the complementary programs, and then we can accelerate. Now they are in the book.
Thank you very, very much.
Before you just end,
on
the question that Carol asked about the involvement of youth and women in agriculture. Yesterday we learned that there were countries that have really tried to get the youth on board, but they always take off. They always take off. You know, they do it one season, the next season they give up. So what I would like to find out from you is, how has Ghana been able to get the youth on board and keep them there and continue? What has been the incentive and the motivation?
Yes, our Youth in Agriculture program is flexible and inclusive, and it meets the needs of various segments of the youth. There are some youth who just want to go to the land and work as farmers, and for those we have modules that meet their demands. But there are some youth also who are out of school, especially the senior high schools. They don't want hoe and cutlass business or machete business. They want quality jobs, and those quality jobs, we try to create those quality jobs as we develop the value chains. For example, if you take the maize value chain, where we have nucleus farmers and outgrowers, we have jobs for agronomists on the commercial farms, we have jobs for irrigation technicians, we have jobs for heavy-duty farm equipment technicians, and where you come to certain levels like the laboratories and the warehouse storage systems, you have jobs for technicians who will assess humidity levels and purity levels and all that. And you can take that for each value chain. You will find quality jobs being generated in each value chain. So for those students out of school who need that kind of job to feel good that yes, they are doing justice to whatever they have learned at school, that's another window that we create for those kinds of youth. But for the generality of youth who probably haven't attained a certain level of education, they prefer to go to the land. And for those also, we have modules that take care of them.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to read this.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. As you're aware, CADIP is going to be 10 years in July 2013 since Maputo 2003. So noting that this is 10 years of government commitment, what strikes you as a leader in terms of key successes as regards CADIP in Zambia?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think first of all we need to understand what were the major issues when you say CADIP. Maybe not many people understand what that represents. You know, that represents the comprehensive African agriculture programs, and I think that what it really did was to provide us with a framework around which each one of the countries could develop its own agenda vis-a-vis its own means. But I think what stands out very clearly is that there is a criteria. Second aspect is that there is even a threshold. It talks about how African governments should ensure that there is at least 10% of their budgets which would be expended on agriculture. Now, as we come to 10-year period, it's I think timely, and as we celebrate the 50 years of the AU, I think it's important to take stock. Where are we at? Because remember, the people that were there 10 years ago are not the same. They're not the same ministers of agriculture. They're not the same presidents and so on and so forth. I think so from the other side of it is this, the point that I think has been made at this conference by President Lula, I think is an important one. In most of our economies, most of our countries, the amount that gets expended in agriculture is called expenditure and not investment. Whereas what goes into other components is referred to as investment. I think this distinction is very, very important to remember that we need to look at this not as an isolated program, but as a program that is integrated with other programs within the respective countries. Therefore, it's necessary that even as we plan normally our 5-year national development plans, it should incorporate and be a deliberate component rather than being seen as an appendage. As an afterthought. You know, CADIP should not be seen as an afterthought, but should be seen as an integral part. And as the theme of this particular conference has stated, we are seeking to eliminate hunger. How do you eliminate hunger? How do you remove hunger and poverty amongst the people? It means that just like we emphasize MDGs and we're monitoring them on a routine basis, we've got to do the same thing with CADIP. CADIP is important. Why? Because the bulk of our population in Africa is dependent on agriculture. It's a fact. You know, and especially the rural population, you can literally say that 100% of the rural population are entirely dependent on agriculture. And it's not just about Zambia. It's about almost every other African country. They are dependent on agriculture. Therefore, it's so crucial to creating the opportunities and the jobs that we're looking for the young generation. Also, the education needs to go beyond those that are in office at the moment. For people to have an interest in agriculture, they must know the benefits that will accrue to agriculture. No longer do I hear the pronunciation of young farmers clubs, for example. How about the curriculum in the schools? Are these children being brought to understand that agriculture is a profitable venture and well worth investing in? Would many of them not want to have a white collar and to go into a bank, go to be an economist, go to be an accountant, go to be a lawyer, rather than going to wear a blue overall and going in the field, and either in the garden or orchard or in the farm? I think we need to make that an important component. The other side, I think, that has been important and I think needs to be emphasized is the infrastructure that goes with agriculture. The infrastructure is critical because without that infrastructure, you cannot transport even the produce that you have in those respective areas. And so I think we need to turn it away from thinking that this is a profession for those that have retired, but be a profession of people that can make money out of it. And that, I think, is the important message that I see at this particular time as we take stock.
Okay, so you've mentioned important things, agricultural investments, you've talked about the youth as well in agriculture, and that was going to be my follow-up questions. Like, what steps do you think governments must take to increase agriculture investments nationally and regionally as well? And also for the programs for the youth and women in agriculture. What programs do you have in Zambia that are empowering these, and what do you think should be done to keep especially the youth into agriculture instead of them coming in and coming out because maybe they think it's not profitable? Do you think there should be specific programs targeted at the youth especially and women?
Yeah, I think so. In fact, I've dealt with some of those issues that you've raised already. Mm-hmm. The bulk of the people that produce food in most of the African countries are women. Okay, the youth may be to a much lesser extent, but certainly it's the women. Women are worried about how their children are fed. Mm-hmm. But remember, like if you take specifically my country, Zambia, 45% of our children under the age of 5 are malnourished, stunted. How can that be? Mm-hmm. Because even the migration of people from the rural areas into urban areas exacerbates the problem. Because in the rural areas, at least they grow food for their own consumption. But the moment you move them from those areas into the urban areas, they have to have cash to be able to buy the food. And if they're not working, they cannot buy the food. And if they're not buying the food, the children will definitely be malnourished, undernourished, and stunted in terms of their growth. So definitely there have to be focused programs specifically to encourage the women and the youth, to help the women. Women don't need to be encouraged, they just need to be assisted because they already know that the responsibility is there. So for example, in Zambia, one of the things that we're doing is the Farmer Input Support Program. The Farmers Input Support Program is where we provide the inputs of fertilizers as well as seed, but also the issue of education. We're talking about conservation farming, we're talking about crop rotation, we're talking about good farming practices such as not repeating the same seed over and over, the issue of how much and how to use the fertilizer, the issues of organic farming. All these are important in ensuring that there is also increased output, not just output, but also increased productivity. In other words, you can be producing the food, but not in sufficient quantities per hectare to justify and give you the profit if you want. And they need to know that the profit can be made so that they have every benefit. The other component is that, to this date, this is 21st century, our people are still using the horse to do their farming, horse, to this day. So one of the things I think we need to be focusing on is the mechanization. Mechanization, or means by which we can do. Ox-drawn, yes, but a tractor will do in an hour what an animal will do for the whole day. So I think that is going to be an important component. So introducing things like tractors and conservation farming and the implements and the shellers and so on and so forth to increase the productivity, the yields from each hectare. In my own country, our target is to be producing between 5 and 7 metric tons per hectare. We're only doing 1.89 at the moment. In other words, below 2 metric tons when we should be producing between 5 and 7. So if we take an average of 6, it means that we're short by 4. In other words, we need to increase our performance at least 2/3 from what we're doing at the moment. So those, I think, are some of the programs that we need to be doing in order to implement a CADIP in our own environments. Some of those Zambia is already tackling. Just on Friday before I left to fly here, I was officiating at a tractor mechanization program where we have got a farm block where there's a lead farmer who is provided with a loan to purchase these implements, but he makes it available to all the other people in the farm block. So for example, in the area in which I was, there was at least more than 50 farmers who were sharing the one tractor. And the lead farmer was obviously providing this. But that meant that they're spreading their risk and they're able to spread their cost of purchasing that particular tractor. They can justify that. What I'm looking to do is to in fact have tractors in all the 800 plus farm blocks in the whole country. Mm-hmm. So if I had 2 tractors per farm block, in other words, 1,600 tractors in the entire country, and implements to go with that, shellers to go with that, you will see a complete transformation in terms of productivity and therefore profitability that would be generated. And this is what we're doing towards CADIP. So we want to increase that. And this is being done with the help of the European Union in terms of provision, but also working with some local suppliers. And so we're looking at how we can curtail some of the costs to make sure that we can spread to as many people as is possible throughout the country. Mm-hmm. We're also undertaking a program of developing farm blocks. These farm blocks are huge undertakings, about 100,000 hectares in each province, and where we are allowing for private sector investment to go in there with the lead farmer. Besides the lead farmer, you've got also many commercial farmers. After commercial farmers, you've got medium-scale farmers. After medium-scale farmers, you've got emergent farmers. After emergent farmers, you've got small-scale farmers who are providing, if you want, outgrower services to the big supplier. So availability of storage capacity, availability of infrastructure, power, water, these are important components that will help us to speed up the process of implementing CADIP in those farm blocks. But you also need them at district level. You need to take them to the individual districts and constituencies so that we bring this particular service closer to the people, and they will have a market, a ready market, which they know that they'll sell their products to.
Okay, so how involved is the private sector in what you have just said? Because I'm thinking that is something that the government cannot do on its own.
No, but that's what I'm saying. We're involving the private sector. We're involving the private sector to provide these particular services. And even these arrangements, for example, are private sector driven. But also we are trying to bring into play the financial institutions, because all this has to be financed. I mean, a tractor will cost you, maybe, let's say, for argument's sake, $80,000 or something in that area. Okay, $40,000 if it's a smaller tractor. This has to be financed. So the private sector, the banking sector, needs to come in and intervene. So what we're doing is bringing them together and showing them these opportunities, that these opportunities exist. The other component is the actual marketing of the commodities once they've been harvested. Again, we are trying to bring the private sector financiers to participate in financing what we're going to purchase. The creation of additional capacity, self-storage capacity, because as you know, most of Africa, there's also very severe and huge post-harvest losses. Yes. Okay, and so how do you overcome that? How do you ensure that the losses do not occur? In fact, not just at the post-harvest, even after you've purchased and put them in storage, because it's poorly done, you cannot keep everything in secure storage. It's left outside, you put tarpaulins on it, so it goes to waste. That has to be overcome. So we're attracting private investment to go into providing additional storage so that we do not have this grain and other crops exposed, as it were, and going to waste.
Okay, so another thing about CADIP is there's been slow progress in some countries, maybe also as a region and a continent, because of policy and institutions and maybe lack of policies. Trade barriers and all that. So what do you have to say about policy reforms and institutional reforms as a country? What are you doing on that front?
Remember what I said to you? I said you have had people changing right from the word go. So you cannot assume that because people were there in 2003, therefore they understand. So the issue of education, I think, is an important one to ensure that it continues. The education must continue to inform the people. And I think this is where the AU obviously can work together with regional groups like COMESA and SADC to, shall we say, remind the participants. But also the point you make about the issue of reform, we have just completed the process. We completed this on 26th of May. I launched the National Agricultural Investment Plan. The National Agricultural Investment Plan has been prepared, developed within the context and the parameters of CADIP, based on the principles of CADIP, consultation process, and so on and so forth. But you raise the issue that there is slow take-up. It's slow take-up, because truthfully, it's a long process where it involves consulting the citizens and going to the villages and going to stakeholders and groups. It is a long process. It has taken us more than 2 years to develop this national investment plan, agricultural investment plan. So it takes time. 2 years out of that 10 years is gone into just doing this consultation process. And also what we're doing at the moment is we're developing the national policy, because we didn't have an agricultural policy in place. So we're developing the national agricultural policy, which should have been done first, even before the national agricultural investment plan. Okay, so we're doing that, and also a strategic plan, the roadmap, if you want. How are you going to do it? So that we're doing at the moment. So it's my sincere hope that maybe before the end of September, we will have completed that particular process, and then we'll present it. And then there is another challenge: how do you finance it? Which is where the constraint has been. This plan, the CADIP as a program, assumes that there will be funds. Okay, it assumes that, but usually there are no funds. There are competing needs in our respective countries, And so it will get constrained by the fact that there's not sufficient funding. So we need to have champions that are going to advocate for this. And also our Minister of Finance must see this as an investment opportunity, that in fact it is an investment, it will pay back. It will pay back because people will start to produce sufficient. And I want to say this to you, that Zambia has done extremely well in the present circumstances as a result of our programs. Right now, we're the only country in the SADC region that has got excess maize. We must be doing something right. All right, and we're also helping our neighbors. We're able to export to our neighbors. So to that extent, I think you can almost say immediately, there has been tremendous benefit that has accrued as a result of implementing programs that are around the CADIP concept, and also the measure that we've already taken. As I said, we must be doing something right if we're able to produce excess maize and selling to our neighbors. Also for Zambia, there's another one, which is a concomitant feature, and that is the Katanga province of Congo. That is a big area, it's a big market, 5.6 million people, and they are looking to be fed. Okay, with all the wars and other things that have disturbed Congo, we are basically, it's a big market for us, and so there should be no constraint in terms of exporting, so long as our own stocks are sufficient to meet our own requirements. But there's a shortfall within the SADC region. We've just come from a conference in Maputo on the 7th of June, in which we saw that there will be a shortfall. Even for 2013 harvest, it will be shortfall. So again, it just emphasizes the need for us to develop the programs around the CADIP to make sure that there is sufficient output, not just of maize grain, but of other crops as well.
Okay. So, it's all very well to talk about CADIP and implementation and all that. CADIP is very ambitious. It has targets, for instance, the 10% budgetary allocation to agriculture, the 6% growth rate. What measures of accountability has a country?
Well, that's what I was just explaining.
To put some more, please explain.
Yes, that's what I've just explained. I've said that you need to have targets,
yes,
by which you must measure, whether it is in terms of the people you're going to reach, the beneficiaries that you're going to reach. That's one. Secondly, the quantity, the quantum, the amount of money that you're going to spend. Thirdly, the actual projects that you're implementing on the ground. Fourthly, there's the issue also of outputs. Are you achieving the outputs? I'm talking about grain. For example, Zambia has progressively been increasing its production from 2003, which is when the program in fact started in our country, the Farmer Input Support Program. In 2003, by the way, the same year that CADIP was being developed. We have had the Farmer Input Support Program in one form or other. And over the years, it has done very, very well. We had our, shall we say that the record output for Zambia was in 2011, where we achieved 3.1 million metric tons. Before that, we were at as low production as 181,000 metric tons, and we were importing maize into the country. Right, for instance, in the last 5 years, we have not been importing any maize whatsoever. And as I said, we progressively went 2.5, 2.7, 3.1 in 2011, our harvest season. And then we dropped a little bit to 2.7 last year. And this year, we're expecting a 2.5 million metric tons of yield. So you have to have targets. This is one example that I'm talking about. Beneficiaries. We're supporting 900,000 farmers at the moment. So one of the things that we're doing going forward is to break that into two components. One, where we've practiced the traditional farmer input support program, and the other one where we're bringing the private sector and we're using what is called electronic voucher system or electronic card system, where we're going to say this is available, private sector can go in and we'll provide you with a subsidy in order for you to be able to do the business in that area. We're just developing that. I'm hoping to implement it on a pilot basis towards the end of this year. So targets have to be achieved, measurable targets that have to be part of the implementation program. So that we're doing. The other side, I think that
the 10%. What do you think of that?
Well, in many cases, in the case of Zambia, Zambia has in fact exceeded those, because most of the time, what we're not accounting for is basically the additional expenditures. We have been spending over and above the budget lines. We have been having supplementary budgets. Okay, as I said, in many cases, we have exceeded that budget by as much as 10 times. So in terms of 10%, Zambia, in fact, has exceeded that number. Although on the budget line, when you look at the budget when it's prepared, it does not seem to have been achieved. But as a consequence of the situation that arises, governments are forced to expend that money, both at the input support level, I'm talking about the production subsidy, but also at the other side, the output subsidy. In order for this crop, which the farmers are producing, to be purchased so that they've got a ready market, Zambia has been also providing a supplementary to purchase at a higher price than actually would be the commercial rate. So that's another subsidy. And then the consumption side, to create the consumption, we've also been subsidizing. We've been buying a bag of maize at 65 kwacha rebased and selling at 60 to the millers. So in the difference between that is been subsidy from government, and that has been a huge subsidy. Now in this year we've decided that we're going to remove that, but leave the production side, so that we can see how this will balance out on what should be the equilibrium price for the mealie meal. Those are some of the measures that we're talking about that CADIP needs to be observed as far as implementation of CADIP is concerned.
Okay. Finally, what would you like to see in the next decade of CADIP, and anything that Zambia would do differently to facilitate implementation of the?
We'll certainly be doing differently. We'll certainly be doing differently, and what I'd like to see is that we're going to use agriculture, including livestock and the fisheries, as basically the driver of our renewable resource. That's basically what I think it will be. Zambia has been, up to this time, very dependent on mineral exploitation. And you know what we've been receiving from taxes from mineral? Less than 5% in terms of returns from taxes. So clearly it's not a viable proposition, although there's a lot of activity, and this GDP growth is as a result of the investment in the mining side. The truth of the matter is return on that investment is not high. Okay, as far as the government is concerned, because the taxes that are paid is what determines how much is available to spend on the people's lives. So I think that agriculture, being a renewable resource, and also because it touches the majority of the people in our respective countries, and Zambia in particular, even though we are very urbanized, still we've got about 61% of our population still lives in the rural areas, and therefore it is an important issue, and that provides the bulk of our people with livelihoods. You may wish to know that we've just completed a census of how many farmers we have. Against a population of 13.6 million people, our farmer population is 1,500,000 people. Okay, that's the number of farmers that we have that are operating. Under the Farmer Input Support Program, we are supporting 900,000. So there's still at least 600,000 that need to be supported in order to make sure that they can be able to make a higher contribution. So we'd like to increase the contribution of the farmer, if you want, agriculture, towards the GDP growth. Our figure at the moment is 16%, so 18%, I beg your pardon. 18% is the contribution that agriculture makes to the GDP. But of that, 14% comes from forestry. So the portion that is attributable to agriculture as agriculture is really only 4%. So what I'd like to see is that we increase that percentage to as high as 33% contribution from agriculture, not just forestry, but agriculture. That a third of our GDP will be contributed to from agriculture. And progressively, I would like to see that goes to beyond 50%, okay, over the next decade. That is what the plan, that calls for investment into infrastructure, for example, investment into mechanization, as I've just mentioned to you. It requires investment into the production of the inputs, the fertilizers, and so on and so forth. And we've just rehabilitated our national our nitrogen chemicals plant for a substantial amount of money, about 75 billion kwacha we have spent into that plant, or in the new currency 74 million kwacha, okay, 75 million kwacha. That has been used to rehabilitate the plant so that it can produce the fertilizers which are needed as input for the small-scale farmers. And out of that production of 150,000 metric tons, half of it will go towards the Farmer Input Support Program. So there is a good example of a local investment program. It's not expenditure, it is investment. And I'm hoping that with that availability of the inputs, and we've got private companies, seed companies that have also developed a substantial variety of different crops. Okay, I think that's a great investment, and would like to try and expand on that. So as part of our diversification program, which is what our thrust would be towards this period, to increase our food security, not just on grain, but on food commodities, including cassava, including rice, including wheat, including soybeans, and so on and so forth. These are critical to ensuring that we've got a balanced food security, secure situation, not just maize, because normally maize gets affected by rainy season. If the rainy season is, and it's a monocrop, basically, in other words, you plant it once in a year. So if we can go to other plants such as wheat, for example, which is a winter crop, it would be fantastic.
Is there buy-in among Zambian farmers over that?
But that's the job of the government to bring in that buy-in. And that's why by educating the farmers, I think that you'll find that there will be. But in that case, we have to invest in, for example, in central pivot systems. Okay? And that's why for me, the outgrower programs become important. A central pivot system is an expensive piece of equipment. You cannot achieve that without having to bring farmers together, pull them together, and then give them fields where this central pivot system is going to be operating. So these are some of the areas that we're looking at. Soybeans and wheat, and at the moment, can yield more per metric ton of production than maize can. So we have to educate our farmers. We've got to bring this to their attention. The infrastructure, the roads. Right now, we're spending a lot of money into roads, into rural areas. And I think that's the right way to go.
Of course.
Yeah.
Transport means. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. My name is Moon, CCTV. I have two questions. First question for Madam Zuma. As Africa is striving now to not only change the destiny of the continent in freeing itself from hunger, but also in overall economic development, what is really the strategy now to create a hunger-free Africa? What are the presidents talking about to take a commitment against this problem in the continent? Maybe for the FAO, they have been supporting the African endeavor for a long time now. Now that Africa is growing economically, there should be a shift of supporting the continent's endeavors in every direction. So how are you supporting the developing, the growing Africa from the former Africa that was only expecting food grain support? Thank you very much.
Les radios communautaires sont des radios de proximité qui sont très proches des populations, des agriculteurs, des tous. Et donc, mon souhait est que dans votre programme, vous intégrez cette dimension des radios communautaires. Et je voulais savoir comment vous comptez travailler avec ces radios, et notamment avec l'Association mondiale des radiodiffuseurs communautaires. Je vous remercie.
I recognize the representative of the Luna Institute, Son Excellency Pablo Okamoto, President of Luna Institute at the podium. Welcome, sir. Excellency, Madam Zuma, you have the floor. Please continue. Yes.
Thank you. I'm Liz Ward, I'm from The Guardian in London, and I've just got two quick questions for the panel. The first one is, there have been lots of declarations and statements, and what is different about this one, there's no sort of concrete targets in it, so do you think it's just another piece of paper? What's so important about it? And secondly, quite a lot of people who from Africa, whenever I talk to them, they always mention corruption. That's one word that I haven't heard said at all throughout this whole meeting. So when it comes to budget, how do we stop money being lost to corruption?
My name is Agbako Ben Kofi from Joy FM Accra. I want to find out that with the experience of CAD, we realize that it's not all the African countries that are able to adhere to the CAD principle. How sure are you that this time around all African nations will adhere to decisions reached at this meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. This is Morgan from CCTV. You have been mentioning that there are 279 million people, hungry people in Africa. CARAP was introduced some 10 years ago. What is different now, just to end the hunger in Africa? Another thing, my question goes to FAO. You have introduced that you are going to you mentioned changes from reducing hunger to eradicating hunger. What do you mean this? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Grace Mama from the Farmers Media Uganda. I have two questions. One goes to
FAO Director General. While we are talking about ending hunger, we need to look at the technologies to try and transform our communities. What is FAO's position on biotechnology as a tool to increase in production? Then the other one goes to the NEPA CEO. We know that agriculturists are quite a common scenario in food productivity. What is NEPA's done on agriculturists in order to achieve the intended goals of the CADA?
And the final question here, please.
I'm Judith. I work for the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. I have two questions. The first one is to Madam Your Excellency. I'd like to find out the issue of investment in technical institutions is quite important. Here I'm talking about institutions like the meteorological institutions. We have ACMA in Niger. How well are we using this information to ensure we increase our productivity? Because in your statement, you said clearly that we have a problem of climate variability that is actually affecting productivity. How well are we using this information generated? My second question is, what does the African Union Commission intend to do differently from what CADA might have wanted to achieve in 2003?
Thank you, colleagues. I will give the floor to the podium. Telephone Excellency, Madam Mario.
Thank you very much. I hope I understood the questions well. The first one was from sensitivity to me about what is the strategy to end the question.
Yeah, most of the decisions you make today as a commitment to achieve 2025 ending hunger in Africa.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think right through the discussions, there were very concrete things that were made. One was about, I'll just mention a few, because you have the declaration. But I think what was important was that there should be a political commitment to end hunger, that we should make it our state policies that we should end hunger and make sure that the poor are taken care of. And it was also made clear that there is no one sector that can deal with this. It has to be a multidisciplinary sector. Even within the state, there has to be a number of different areas that deal with it, not just the agriculture, not just the health, water, infrastructure, marketing, all those things that you need, provision of land, especially for women farmers. So I think the strategy is to look at this in a holistic manner, not just to say we look at food. We look at agriculture in a very holistic manner, from growing what we eat so that we reduce the amount of money we spend in importing, to processing what we produce. But between growing and processing, there are a number of things that need to be. We need to increase the productivity of the land. So we need fertilizers, we need water, we need all those things. We need energy, but also we need storage. We need good infrastructure for distribution. We need then to process what we have produced. both for local consumption and for export, and making sure that the markets are available. The Nigerians are using technology to assist women farmers with fertilizers. Somebody said the word corruption was never mentioned. She wasn't listening because I heard the word corruption from the Minister of Nigeria when he said it took them 90 days to clean up the corruption that was there in terms of the fertilizer that was supposed to reach the farmers. It wasn't reaching the farmers. Only 11% was reaching the farmers. So they put a plan with the support of the president and the government that cleaned that corruption that was happening in terms of fertilizer distribution. So I did hear the word mentioned in that context. But I think also the strategy is also about investing in the people, because you also have to bring water, electricity, if possible, to the homestead, because if the women are the ones who are working in agriculture, and if they have to spend time also going to fetch water from the homestead and firewood, that also takes away from their productivity. So the strategy is to look at it in a very holistic manner. And of course, the fact that this meeting is taking place and next year there is a summit shows that there is political will and commitment to this. And of course, there were also examples of successes even within the continent. So we can look at that. Industrialization using agriculture is also part of it. So just to mention a few, but also to have partnerships and to learn lessons from other regions. That's why we have the Mula Institute here. That's why we have the Chinese and the Vietnamese, because they have also succeeded in dealing with this. But obviously, it doesn't mean that we will take exactly what they did and transport it here. We'll have to adapt to our own situation, but we can learn lessons and partner with them as well. So it's also to get partnerships from those who have succeeded and who have an interest, and that's why we have FAO here with us. So, but of course, this meeting was not a summit, it was a high-level meeting. So it's not a meeting that takes final decisions. What has happened here obviously will be brought to the summit. And next year the theme is agriculture anyway, so it will fit very well into that theme. And so the real decisions of summit will then be taken there. But a lot of exchange of information, experiences was done, and countries will continue to use that information even if it hasn't been part of the summit. And I don't think it's just just be another piece of paper. I think if you look at Africa today, it's an Africa over the last 2 decades that is very different from the Africa there was before. And there's been a lot of focus on the fact that we were able to develop Canada and say this is our program for agriculture, and countries, 32 countries now have made their own compact Canada related. So, and it's us saying we're going to do it, so I don't understand. It's just another piece of paper. It's us who are going to do it. It's us who have spent these days and this time discussing this matter because we are committed to doing something about it. So, indeed, we will implement, and we are already implementing. It's not like we're starting from scratch. It's just to accelerate because we are troubled that there are still people on the continent children who are malnourished, who are undernourished. There are people who are not getting enough food. So it's a concern for all of us, and it's a challenge that we are determined to deal with. So I think you should rest assured that it will not just be another piece of paper. Progress from financial Africa. You say for the last 10 years there hasn't been progress. There has been a lot of progress, and a lot of it was tabulated here, including countries like Ghana, who was the first to be able to have hunger and to have poverty, and it's still going on to deal with the rest. And so, and there are many other countries, Ethiopia, there were a lot of countries mentioned that have made a lot of progress, and others are also making progress. So we are making progress, but we are not satisfied that there is enough and fast enough progress. That's why we are still continuing to discuss. We will only stop discussing when we think we have eradicated hunger and poverty. As long as we have them, we will continue discussing. But that does not mean it's because there is no progress. It just means we have not reached our goal. The budget leads to donors, and how can we look after the poor? Yes, I think it's a very, very good question. But I think now what we're saying is that the donors, when they give us budgets, should be budgets that are linked to what our priorities are. And if a country wants to end hunger, the donors must also accept that their budget will also be used towards ending hunger. And I do hope there is no donor that can say, no, I'm allowing people to be hungry, so don't use my money towards ending hunger. I hope there is no such donor on earth. So I think we should be stressing that this is a critical question of ending hunger. Not only for this generation, but for future generations, for future progress of the continent. So even those donors should be willing to, that their money should be used towards that. Trade with Brazil and China. I think the world is very diverse, and Africa should trade with all of it. We're trading with the US, we're trading with the EU, but Brazil has got a special place in the sense that Brazil, I can't call it an African country, but it has a lot of people of African origin in Brazil. So we're linked not only by interest, but we're actually linked by blood. Black people moved from here to Brazil, and they are now in Brazil. So there is a very special link between us and Brazil. But over and above the special link between us and Brazil, Brazil is a country of the South, and emphasizing that there must be South-South cooperation and trade between us and South. And so, and also there are lots of lessons that both sides can learn from each other. But we would also like to improve our trade with Brazil as a continent. And I think from the Brazilian side there is a willingness. We just need to then work out what do we trade, what do we do. It's not only about trade, also about cooperation, scientific, and in many other areas, as we are doing now, even in agriculture. So Brazil has a special place. China is also very important. everybody is trading with China. And Africa cannot be an exception. But also China has been on the continent even before it became an economic giant. It was in Africa during the struggles, so it also has its own place in the continent. I think the idea of radio stations is fantastic, and I think our communications people should link up with yourself. We are also planning to be able to broadcast, especially to radios, and community radios are critical. The country of my origin includes community radios and not even as government. So I cannot agree with you more that community radios are important and we should link up with you. And hopefully we see you in our summits as well and show them, make sure, thanks to FAO for bringing you here, but now we should also develop our relationship with you. The Guardian, I think I've answered your questions already. And of course, what guarantee do we have that all nations would adhere to the decisions? I think the guarantee is that all nations, no nation in Africa can afford not to do anything about hunger. I think that is our guarantee. Because if they don't do anything about hunger, I think somebody said, I can't remember in their input, said that hunger anyway is a threat everywhere. And so I think we should not allow hunger anywhere. And I think our people now are also, especially the young people, are very impatient about these things. And if any country decides they don't want to do anything about hunger, they will not be able to sustain their position even within their own country. But in terms of whether we can do anything, we can't do anything. We hope that just on the moral, economic, and social imperatives, we make sure that every country does something about hunger and does not ignore what happens. The other question that was directed to me, investment in technical institutions. I think technical institutions obviously are very important, especially as we talk about investing in the youth, particularly because without technical expertise, the youth cannot really reach their full potential, but also our economies will not get to their full potential. So I agree with you that investing in technical institutions is very important, because the economy needs a lot of skilled, technically skilled people, women, men, youth and women are very important. What will we do differently? I think all the discussions that took place today, yesterday, and the other day, we're discussing what we want to do differently, better, and what we want to do more, because there are things that we've been doing well, so we must do more things, and those that we haven't been doing better, we must improve. And they were mentioned right through the discussions, including, of course, partnerships. And so I don't think you want me to rehash all the discussions. But I think the important thing is the commitment of member states, the political will, and the multidisciplinary approach, comprehensive approach, and partnerships that are helpful to what we want to do. I think I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you. I think I have 5 or 6 to go through how FAO supports Africa now have changed. Well, we have been supporting Africa a long time, and we have our regional conference each 2 years. And the conference, regional conference, sets the priorities for the biennium. So we have a program of work that is approved in the biennium. The last biennium, the priorities were reducing rural poverty, improve food security, and more specifically on cassava, value chain, aquaculture. It was completely new, first time that it appears, and also the pushes program from small farmers. Those were the priorities set by the conference. So we renew each 2 years our plans, how to support, and try to reflect the way that what I can tell you is that these issues that Africa now sets the goal to eradicate hunger reflect this change. We now believe that this is possible. 10 years ago, probably, if you raise this question, it will be more doubt than support, as we saw in this conference here today. This reflects the change that Africa faces. Why FAO don't let this fund, the trust fund, to the African Commission? Well, this fund was created by FAO Regional Conference in Congo. We are implementing the fund, setting a steering committee with the main donors, and then we have an assembly of donors that will integrate all the small and big donors of the fund. And the fund, African Union is part of the steering committee. The board, we have asked African Union to be there, and the fund will be managed by FAO regional office in Ghana, where is the proper, the regional conference works with the regional office here. It's part of our governing bodies, the decision who will manage it. So instead of we come out with a proposal to change it, but if your concern goes to the fact that FAO will manage the funds in taking the decision by our own, be sure that we are not. We are trying to bring on board our partners. This is to partner, is to work together, not to only to FAO to manage it. The third, I very welcome the presence of the Association of Communitary Radios. We are working closely to different regions. We do believe that this is something that needs to be improved, and we are doing it already. I comment on the garden. All the time that we approach this issue of funds, trust fund, etc., appears the problem of corruption and good governance. There is no doubt that this needs to be eradicated. It's a problem. Not only in African countries, in all parts of the world. But it's not the only way to, let's say, to consume the budget and avoid that the money we put as donor goes to the poor. I will remember some time ago talking about Haiti. there was a report from, I believe that the Guardian, saying that 90% or something that all the money that DFID spends on hygiene never got to a hygiene. Stop it on the way of bureaucracy, stop it on the way with other players, but never got in hygiene, something like that. I'm not sure about the numbers. So what I'm telling you is that there are many ways to avoid the money to get to who needs it. What we are trying is to improve this streamline. One good example, good practice, has been this cash transfer or cash work. This goes directly to the woman, and the woman knows how better spend the money. It's proven. From many, many countries that we have implemented this, we can see now much more efficient on the management, on research, when we implement those kind of social nets. What changed when you talk about eradicating instead of reducing? Change everything. Means that we will not accept anymore hunger as a normal part of our life. Means that we will promote the right to food. That is the most basic right, human being right. Means that this will be not a charity, this will be an entitlement of the people to be free, to have their food available. So in my opinion, this is a completely different approach, and will change completely all the problems from now. Finally, last point, biotechnology. I'm not sure if you is the same one who made the same question to me 3 months ago and published just half of my answer. So I ask you please to publish all the answers. I was in Uganda 3 months ago and they made the same question. I started saying, wow, let's not mix biotechnology with GMO. If you want to fight Monsanto, you will have a lot of support around the world. But Monsanto is not biotechnology. Biotechnology has a lot of other applications, including vaccines, including biofortified foods. There's a lot of other ways that biotechnology improves the performance. And biotechnology is a new science. And we need it to face the climate change impact. For example, we are working on resistance to drought. And Africa decided now to eat more and more rice. And rice is one of the products, the crops that use more water. So to achieve resistance to drought, we will need biotechnology. Does not mean that we will need GMOs. Also, the second part was, what about GMOs? What I used to say, this is important value added, but we don't need GMOs now to eradicate hunger in Africa. What we need is to transform the small-scale subsistence farm in a local producer that gives part of this producer to the market. If we succeed in giving those small farmers the seeds from the Green Revolution, what they can provide to the local markets will be more than enough to eradicate hunger. So, to summarize, it's part of a scientific approach. We need to carefully approach it. There is a lot of resistance the way it is implemented. There is a lot of resistance from the consumer side, but we need to keep this scientific component available for our future, because we probably will need it. Thank you.
Obrigado. Bom, depois que foi
veja como é que está atualmente os quilômetros do Brasil.
Dealing with the trust fund, as long as the money comes to help the African farmers and is used in Africa, the majority of it, we will have no problem at all, and that's why we have no problem. That's the only thing we will monitor, that it is really used in Africa. And I don't doubt that it will. Thank you.
Thank you. I give you the Dr. Mayati for the question to the SBC.
Thank you. Before answering my question, I would like to answer the issue of corruption. The African Union has set a high-level testing chaired by President Meki, and on illicit financial fraud. And several studies have concurred with the conclusion of the testing, studies from the IMF and the World Bank. The amount of illicit financial fraud going out of Africa is roughly 2011, $35 billion. So generally people think, well, it's all about corruption. 85% of that money is multinationals who do not pay their taxes. I repeat, 85% is multinationals not paying their taxes. So when we liaise with the G8, we tell them, please help us to reinforce our capacity to tax the benefits adequately. And we have a long way to go. And we tell them, please 50% due to corruption, please help us repatriate these funds. And when the transparency issue is put on the board, I think these are two key issues that have to be looked at. So, just to say that when multinationals do not pay the taxes, this is tax evasion. And they want to put, well, they have price transfer mechanisms in order to avoid. So Africa is losing a lot of money out of what could be called corruption, but promoted by multinationals. This is the first answer to corruption. Only on the risks, it is true, but we have now a continental institution for managing the risks, and that continental institution is within the framework of the African Union, and we have regional mechanisms in order to tackle the issues of vulnerability, essentially vulnerability to climate issues. So these mechanisms are incident mechanisms built on different success stories which have taken place nationally, but we do within Canada give a high priority to the issue of risk management capacity. So it is very important for us here. And well, we also think about putting in place insurance schemes and so on. It will be a long process, but it's a priority for us.
There's a question I didn't answer, but I can continue with you, is how much you use this information. I think the information is very useful. I think you heard that nowadays it's not so much the variation of weather that is a problem, but it's to make sure that the policies are right, the finances go to those policies. Because now we relatively know when there is going to be a drought and when there are likely to be floods. Of course, we may not be that accurate, but we know that this time there's going to be this phenomenon, El Nino, and whatever the different ones. So that information is used to plan and to know where the risk is going to be and where the problems are going to be. So it is actually used. And maybe just to add to what my brother has said here, at the G8 meeting, there was a lot of discussion about this, though it's put under transparency and tax. But basically, there is a lot of, I'm sure if it was asked to be calling transparency, we would probably be calling it we would be calling it corruption. It's not only that they don't pay tax, they also don't declare what they are extracting. They undervalue what they are extracting. And that is corruption, isn't it? And therefore we need money because they will say they extracted X amount, and yet in reality they extracted X plus amount. And also the tax, as you were saying, the other thing they do, they inflate their costs. So then they put the money they are making, they hide behind the costs. And so we need to improve our capacities as well to be able to determine the cost, whether what they are putting is correct. I mean, there is a company that I will not name that has been declaring losses for the past 15 years. Why would you stay there if you are a business person and we are declaring losses? Why would you stay in business? It's clear there are no losses. They just don't want to pay tax. So that's where the majority of the money is. There's a study that was done in London that showed actually that only 3% of all the money that's lost out of Africa is from corruption from Africans. The rest is either multinationals undervaluing, not declaring, inflating their costs, not paying taxes, and the smaller, and then another proportion is actually criminal activities, criminal mining, criminal where people are just doing things which they are supposed to do, and taking our resources out. So I think when we discuss this thing, we should put it in its proper perspective. Thanks.